Who is Bashar?
All right, I'll take a day to you this day of your time. How are you all?
Bashar presents himself as an extraterrestrial being, and what's happening is a telepathic connection that allows me to act as a translation device for his thoughts.
Have you met aliens on Earth?
There are hybrid beings among us that are helping us. They look human enough that they can blend in. In about 2 years, we're going to actually have official open contact.
Darryl Anka, thank you for making time to be here.
It is my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Darryl, what does it mean to be a channel? Can any person channel? What is channeling in the first place?
Everyone does channel from time to time. When you're doing something you love to do, when you're in the zone, so to speak, things are flowing, you're not really feeling or paying attention to the passage of time, you're in a channeling state. The channeling state is in the brain called gamma, which is between 40 and 100 cycles per second of brainwave activity or higher. And so when people are really focused on something that they're so absorbed by that they don't even pay attention to what's going on around them, that's a channeling state. So everyone not only has the ability, everyone does experience the channeling state many times in their lives. And it just depends on how you can sustain it, what you can do with it, what you choose to do with it, how you choose to express being in that state. So it's a very natural, altered state of the brain.
And you channel what you refer to as an entity. Who is Bashar?
Yeah, Bashar presents himself as an extraterrestrial being, and that what's happening is a telepathic connection that allows me to act as a translation device for his thoughts. So the idea behind it is that my brainwaves alter in a certain way to become closer to matching his frequency. He does the same thing from his side, and somewhere in the middle, our brainwave frequencies kind of lock and harmonize. And when they synchronize that way, then I can, in a sense, become a model of his thoughts, and it automatically gets translated through my brain into the language that I understand, which is English. So now no one has to believe that Bashar is real or that I'm channeling an ET, but the information is coming from a higher level. It might be an aspect of my own consciousness. I have no way of proving that Bashar exists at this point, but the point of delivering the information is not to prove his existence, but to prove that the information works. And so by applying the information that's coming through the channeling into your life in different situations, you can get the results that the information is saying you will get. And that alone is, to me, proof enough, is that the information proves itself by applying it and getting a change.
And you have done brain scans and some observation of your brain during the channeling. What is actually physiologically happening in the brain while you're channeling?
Oh, several things. Yeah, we did that. We hooked me up to an EEG for the documentary we did called First Contact, and it was all about how I became a channel and so on and so forth. And we wanted to demonstrate that channeling is a true altered state that anyone can do. And so, in being hooked up with the technician reading the output, both when I'm not channeling and when I am, then we get a comparison. So, several things are happening during the channeling state. One of which is there's this thing called a set point, and the set point represents how your brain and at what speed your brain absorbs and processes information, how it scans your world and how it receives information and processes it. Now, when you're growing up, that set point may fluctuate, but as soon as you achieve a certain level of maturity, it sort of stops at that point. It stops at whatever that speed is. 10 bits per second, 11 bits per second, however you want to express it. So But we found out that that's not supposed to change during your lifetime, unless, of course, you have some kind of a traumatic head injury or something like that. That can change it. But we found out that during the channeling, my set point actually does go up. So it's processing at a higher rate, a higher speed, absorbing information, making associations at a higher rate than normal. That's not supposed to be possible, according to the technician. The other thing that we found out that happens is during the channeling, the centers of my brain that are supposed to be processing my personality shut down. So if my brain is shutting down in the areas that allow me to be me, then who's talking during the channeling? So, that was an unusual finding as well. And there are several other things that, we discovered that probably would be better for a technician to describe.
Hmm. From Bashar's perspective, or your perspective, or your collective perspective, what is the afterlife like for human beings? Or is there such a thing as an afterlife?
Yeah, absolutely. And in fact, the idea that it's an afterlife is kind of a misnomer. In a sense, this is the afterlife because our natural state is spirit. We're non physical consciousness, we're energy. So the idea of creating a physical experience is really the secondary level of our existence. We're in spirit right now. We never leave spirit. That's our natural state. Physical reality is something that we're creating as a focal point within our consciousness to play this game where we can change, grow, have discoveries, and discover ourselves from a new perspective. That's what physical reality is for, to go through the process of change, to discover new ideas, new perspectives of ourselves. In spirit, it's a timeless state, nothing changes. So we create this experience that's sort of almost like a daydream within our consciousness, and we call this daydream physical reality. And no matter how real it seems, it's really just a projection of our consciousness. So our natural state is spirit. And therefore, when we're done with the physical experience, when we've set up our entry time, being born, and our exit time, dying, all we're doing is really just sort of waking up from that daydream and expanding back into our full soul self and remembering who we are and that we created this experience for our own purposes. So, yeah, there is what we typically call an afterlife, but from Bashar's point of view, that is actually our real life.
What is the function of forgetting who we are?
So that we can remember who we are from a new point of view. Like I said, in spirit, it's timeless. You can't really change. You have access to everything. So by forgetting who you are, by narrowing down your consciousness to this particular life path focus, you can discover new things and expand and grow and change and see yourself from a different perspective. Because the idea is that the structure of existence never actually changes. It is what it is. What changes and what allows creation to expand is our experience of it, our relationship to it, our perspective of it. So, creating physical reality is the mechanism that creation uses and that we use as aspects of creation to actually expand creation, to keep going, to keep experiencing itself in all the ways that it possibly can. So, that's really why physical reality exists.
Is there any type of objective reality outside of the self, or is everything a projection being manifested from an individual point? I.e., is there no such thing as another person? Is everything me?
No, 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 no. There are other beings. Yes, there are other aspects, but what we're creating is our projection of them, our interpretation of them. We actually have an analogy of that going on right now. You're not seeing me directly. You're seeing an electronic recreation of me as I'm seeing an electronic recreation of you. But we're real people interacting through this interface. So look at physical reality in the same way. It's an artificial interface. We create our version of everyone else based on what we need to see of that being as they do the same for us. just as I'm perceiving your electronic image in the way that my computer interprets it, and you're seeing mine in the way that your computer interprets it. So physical reality is sort of structured the same way.
Hmm. Are you and I and everyone else listening to this and everyone on the planet connected right now? And is there some objective way to measure that? Is there a tangible connection between all beings?
Well, one obvious way is that we're all creating something that we generally all agree on is the planet Earth, and that we're playing this experience out on a planet called Earth, and that it has certain rules and regulations like physics and chemistry and things like that. So the very fact that we are all able to sort of describe something similar, I see a tree, I see a car, I see the sky, I see clouds, the fact that you can say, yes, I agree, I see those same things, is proof of that connection, because all of this is done by agreement on a higher level. So we're all energetically connected, and we're all constantly communicating on that higher level with one another to perpetuate this reality simulation that we're creating, this projection of consciousness, so that it's the same enough for all of us that we can sort of coexist in the same reality experience, so we can play the same game,
Hmm.
so to speak.
What is the function of chronic fear for the modern human? I understand the function of fear and having a cortisol response and adrenaline and going through sympathetic, parasympathetic, but the chronic fear that many people hold, myself included, I think like life can be a process of unwinding some of those limiting beliefs and
Well,
fears and such.
exactly that. Exactly that. It's a process. It's the challenges that we set up for ourselves based on how we have orchestrated our belief systems to create those challenges, so that we can learn to transform them, so we can learn to overcome them. So the idea of something that's chronic is usually representative of, we haven't found the belief system within our consciousness that is constantly perpetuating the same challenge over and over again. Because you see, the idea is that our physical reality experience is sort of determined by what we believe to be true, what we've been taught to believe is true. So what we buy into as a belief is what reinforced, I would say, by the idea of the emotions that make it feel real, by thought patterns that make us think it's real, by behaviors that make us behave as if what we're getting in this belief is real. And then, of course, we get the reflection from physical reality
Mm.
that it is real, because we get an effect from it. So something that's chronic is simply the same belief repeating over and over again, creating the same reinforcing conditions, because we haven't figured out what that belief is and why we're holding on to it. So when we discover what that belief actually is, what we're really afraid of, and we realize that that's just a story we're being told by a negative belief so it can perpetuate itself, then we can realize that we don't have to pay attention to that story. You see, this is how beliefs are structured. If we don't have something we believe to be true, we can't have a physical reality experience, because physical reality isn't real. It's not a real place unto itself. It's a projection of our consciousness. So the belief systems that make up our physical personality while we're experiencing physical reality have to perpetuate themselves to constantly keep physical reality re-energized, seeming like it keeps going on, it keeps playing out. So positive beliefs we don't have a problem with, because they reinforce themselves in positive ways. But negative beliefs, mechanically speaking, are simply designed to use negative methodologies to reinforce themselves. And one of those negative methodologies is making you too afraid to let it go, making you too afraid to move forward. So we constantly loop into this constant fear of staying exactly where we are, even though it may be very uncomfortable, because we have a deep seated belief somewhere that if we let it go and move ahead and change ourselves, something worse will happen. That's the story the negative belief is telling us, so we won't let it go. It's not a fact that something worse will happen. It's just what the negative belief is getting us to believe, so that it can continue to keep perpetuating itself. Once you understand that that's how the mechanism works, you can go, oh, that's just a story. It's not a fact that something worse will happen. And you can start investigating yourself and sort of analyzing that belief and realizing that it really doesn't make sense. And once it doesn't make sense, it's gone.
What about feelings and stored energy within the body? Where approaching it, can you approach everything intellectually, or are there some energies within that need to be somatically released in order to
I think, yeah, it depends on the person, and it depends on how they've stored those beliefs and how it's affected the idea of your physical form and what works best for that person's belief system. Some people may be able to approach it intellectually. Some people may need a physical, visceral experience of releasing it and getting in touch with it. It just depends because, again, anything physical is the result of patterns of energy. So some people may have easier access to those patterns of energy by utilizing the body, and some people may be able to just utilize the mind. It really depends on the individual.
what about with yourself? I think that, people look to you for divine information and sorts, or to Bashar. There could be assumption that since you have integration with that, you have all
Mhm.
the answers. You are in a state of
I don't have
liberation,
all the answers. I
samadhi.
don't have all the answers, neither does Bashar, but
Yeah.
he has a evolved point of view. He has a heightened point of view by being part of a society that is more evolved than humanity. So they have more experience at this. They have more experience at experiencing how these concepts are applied and how they work. But for me, since I have, I've been channeling him for 40 years, over 40 years, and so a lot of his understanding has rubbed off on me, and I apply it that way. So I don't need so much anymore the idea of dealing with it from a physical point of view. I can pretty much understand how what's happening is happening and how it's working. And I can, in a sense, just sort of mental myself through it, in a different way at this point, just in the same way that he would. So yeah, I would say I'm becoming more like the way he handles things as a physical being. But again, whatever works for you is what works for you.
Is there anything you struggle with that's shareable?
I wouldn't say I struggle at this point. I do have challenges like anyone, but Bashar has recently talked about, the way that you handle challenges is, first of all, to understand you set them up on your life path for the purpose of stretching your soul, growing yourself, expanding yourself. So if you face any challenge calmly, with confidence, with curiosity, knowing that there is information there for you that will benefit you, and creativity, you can always figure out what the challenge is about. You can always use it to your advantage. So in understanding that, that's the way I face challenges. Is I don't, anymore after years and years of this, go into any kind of a panic mode or anything like that, or a worrisome mode. I just go, oh, here is something that's unexpected. Here's something that I'm facing. If I stay calm, I stay in the right state of being, and I face it with curiosity, like, what is this all about? How can I get an advantage from this? What's the lesson here? What am I going to learn? And I use my creative imagination to go through it and say, well, maybe it's for this, maybe it's for that. How can I use it this way or that way? Um, then by understanding that it can always work to my advantage, there's absolutely no reason to go into a negative or worried state about it. Because as Bashar often says, it doesn't really matter what happens that makes the difference in your life. It only matters what you do with what happens that makes the difference, because everything can serve double duty. It can be experienced positively, it can be experienced negatively. It's your choice to stay in the state that allows you to experience it in the way you would prefer to. It doesn't have a mind of its own. You're the one calling the shots. So if you stay in the proper positive state and approach it that way, then that's the effect you will get. If you go into a negative reaction based on things that are happening, then that's the effect you will get, and you'll amplify that direction.
Do you experience any? I have all sorts of neurotic behaviors and distracted behaviors and addictive behaviors and things of the sort that I navigate my life. Do you have anything like that I mean, you're a lot older than I am as well, so you've had time to kind of work things out, as well. But Ramdas has a bit around, you don't actually extinguish any of your neurotic behavior. You just kind of come into relation with them and then become more manageable. And as you,
Well, in a sense, the option to choose those things, those experiences are always there. They never go away. But the idea is that you learn to choose what you prefer without invalidating what you don't. Because what it is that you've already experienced has brought you to this place. So you can understand that it was part of the path you laid out for yourself to encourage you to seek out how to do things in a different way, in a more positive way, in a way that works better for you. So you never invalidate what you don't choose. You just stay in between in the balanced state and go, well, this is what I prefer, but I'm not going to invalidate what I no longer prefer. It's simply not vibrationally compatible with who I prefer to be anymore. I've learned the lesson from it. I understand why it was there. It's the challenge I set up for myself. I have figured out creative ways of looking at it and using it to my advantage to bring me to where I'm at. So I know I'm growing. I know I'm changing in the way that I prefer to. So you can sort of thank what you've been experiencing that you don't prefer for bringing you to a place where you can now more readily choose what you do prefer, but you don't invalidate or judge what you've been through in any way, shape, or form as a negative. You just take it in stride as part of the challenge that you are now able to transform over time, slowly, quickly, whatever works for you. You know, the whole idea you brought up of addiction, Bashar's talked about this extensively. Addiction, in a sense, is something where you're sort of feeling a kind of emptiness or a hole within yourself. Something feels like it's missing. And what you're trying to do with the addiction is either fill it or numb it so you don't have to look at it. So the idea is, doesn't matter what the addiction is, whether it's drugs, whether it's food, whether it's something else, whether it's some kind of other behavior. The idea behind all of that is that you have a belief about yourself that creates a feeling of disconnection, a feeling of emptiness. And an addiction is just an attempt outwardly to try and get rid of that, to try and satisfy that, to fill that hole, fill that emptiness. Or again, conversely, you don't want to look at it, so you try to do something that keeps numbing it so you don't have to pay attention to it. But the idea really is, again, mostly from belief systems about being disconnected, about being brought up in a way where you are getting beliefs that are negative reinforced by certain things, either coming from your parents, your friends, your school, your society, what have you, that reinforce the idea of the negative beliefs you may have about yourself, like, I'm not worthy, I'm not loved, I'm not deserving. All of these things are at the root of any addiction, no matter what kind of an addiction it is. When people understand that they are worthy by the fact that they exist, because creation doesn't make mistakes, then you can start building an understanding that you are connected, you are worthy. In fact, there's no such thing as actually being disconnected. You can't be disconnected from source. Otherwise, you wouldn't exist. So the idea is to understand that if you exist, source needs you to exist in order for it to be complete. So you're worthy just by the fact of your existence. And that realization can sort of soften and ease be the beginning of the process of reclaiming your understanding of your connection to source and starting to feel that that emptiness inside is being filled up because you are worthy, you are loved, you are supported unconditionally in life. See, that's the ironic thing about being able to experience something negative and or positive is you are so unconditionally supported by existence that you can actually create an experience of believing that you're not supported. That's how supported you are. It doesn't contradict any idea that you want to buy into, even if it's the idea that you don't have connection or don't have support. It will support that because you are connected. You can't actually be disconnected, but you can create an experience of disconnection, but you're creating that experience of disconnection because you're connected. There's no other way to do it. It's like saying, well, I'm out of control. No, you're creating an experience of being out of control. But when you create an experience of being out of control, you're controlling that. So you have to look at the irony of some of these things when people say, like, oh, I have to learn to trust, I have to learn to be confident. No, you don't. You are always trusting something to be true. You don't have to learn to trust. You are always confident about something. Even when people say, oh, I lack confidence, I can say, well, you're very confident about that. So the idea is not that you have to learn to trust or learn to be confident. It's what are you putting your trust in? What are you confident about? Is that working for you? And if it isn't, then decide what you would rather put your trust and confidence in, because you're always trusting and always confident that something is happening, that something is true. You get to decide what that is.
Do you have a tangible memory of the last time in your life that you forgot that you were connected, or you felt an insatiable void within you and you felt out of control, or anything of the sort in your own life?
Well, sure, that's years and years and years ago. But yes, of course, I can recall that.
How long ago? Is it okay that I'm asking?
Over 40 years ago.
Really?
Yeah.
Good for you, bro.
Well, again, you know, that's part of the thing that happens when you do go into a channeling state, is a lot of it isn't just about what I'm delivering in service for others. It's up to the channel to also pay attention to that information and apply it in your own life. So I understood before I started actually channeling publicly that that's what channeling was all about, to be of service to others. And then when you are of service to others, you can use the information also to your own benefit. So it works on both levels. And so, in understanding that to begin with, then of course, it took time for me to practice how to do that over a few years. But once I got the point, once I understood what Bashar was delivering and understood the mechanics of it, that it's literally just hey, this is an instruction manual for how you operate your life. I got, okay, I get it. It's an instruction manual. Just like you get an instruction manual to operate a piece of machinery, you follow the instructions and the machine will work. So if you don't follow the instructions, it won't. So I just started learning, okay, don't add any more instructions, don't take away any instructions, don't overcomplicate it, don't overthink it. He's giving you the structure of how you're creating your reality experience. Just follow the instructions and it works. That's all there is to it. So once you understand that, once you get to the point of going, this is actually more simple than we think, and you start going, okay, instruction one, instruction two, three, four, five, done, and you start getting the result, then that starts reinforcing the idea of, well, this is obviously working, then why would I choose to do anything else? That's where you get to. It's not like, is this working? It's like, nothing else is actually what works. So why would I choose to go in any other direction? It makes no sense anymore to choose something that isn't this. So yeah, it's been a long time since I've experienced that level of concern over what it is I need to do when a challenge comes up. I know exactly how to approach it and it changes things. So why would I do anything else?
Who was Darryl Anka 40 years ago? And was there an instantaneous transition of sorts where you kind of came into a moment of, I don't worry anymore, or if I do worry, I just am able to acknowledge the worry and still hold like an observer perspective on this and move forward in a positive way?
That's what happened in the first few years of the channeling. That's what I'm saying. It went from, a typical human reaction to things to going into more of that neutral observer mode to then going into nothing else makes sense. So now I just approach it that way. Now it's become what, people say second nature to approach things. It's actually first nature now, but it just becomes my automatic response. When something comes up, I don't go into worry because I know that doesn't work. So it's been ingrained in me long enough that when a challenge comes up, I just react and respond in the way that I have now been trained to for decades.
What changed for you?
Well, that's what I'm just explaining. It's the understanding that this is what works.
How did the understanding arise? Was there a moment?
It's a process. So, in other words, when you apply the information and you get a result, that's an aha moment. You go, oh my God, this actually works. And that starts reinforcing your ability to go, well, then let's try that again in this challenge. And let's do it again in this challenge. And you start seeing that it keeps working. So, it can be an aha moment, but at the same time, if you just keep practicing that, then it becomes more ingrained and becomes your natural response to things.
Why do you think so many people? Why is suicide rates so high? Why it feels to me like many people, statistically are suffering, and then I think there's probably a much broader, quiet suffering that's arising in culture, and there's a lot of other things happening as well.
It's from everything that we just sort of touched on. The idea that people feel disconnected, feel disempowered, feel that they're not in control of their lives because there's a whole bunch of beliefs that are probably in their unconscious mind that they're unaware of that are driving their behaviors and driving their thoughts and their actions and their feelings. See, the idea is you can't have a feeling without having something that you believe to be true first. The belief is the blueprint. It reinforces itself with emotions and thoughts and behaviors to make it seem real. Whether the belief is conscious or unconscious doesn't matter. The point is, it's the feelings are secondary. There's no such thing as a feeling without having a belief or a definition of something being true first. A way to illustrate this is take a word that you don't know the meaning of. And if you look at that word and somebody says, well, how do you feel about that? You go, well, I don't know, because I don't know what it means. So I don't have a feeling about it. But when somebody tells you, well, the word means this, and now suddenly you understand what the word means, now you start feeling a reaction to it. You start having emotions about what the word means. So without having that definition, and buying into that definition as being true, you don't generate emotions, you don't generate thoughts, and you don't generate behaviors. This is why, if you don't prefer what your thoughts, feelings, and behaviors are, you can always trace them back to having a belief that is out of alignment with your true natural vibration. So you can ask the question, well, what would I have to believe is true about myself in this situation in order to feel, think, and behave the way that I am feeling, thinking, and behaving? What would I have to believe is true about myself to get those emotions, those thoughts, and those behaviors? You can work it backwards and find out what that belief is if you're willing to explore it and willing to listen. The answer will come up because you're pulling it from your unconscious mind. You're not leaving it there. By being willing to investigate yourself and ask that kind of a question, then you will pull it from the unconscious mind if you're willing to hear the answer. Or you can conversely ask, well, if I did move forward, if I did let go of this behavior, if I did let go of this feeling, if I did let go of the belief that's generating these feelings, thoughts, and behaviors, what am I afraid might actually happen? Because if you're afraid that something worse will happen, you'll stay exactly where you are. You'll never move forward because we always move in the direction of what we believe benefits us, and we always move away from what we believe does not. But the key word is what we believe benefits, what we believe does not. So if you actually believe that something worse will happen if you move forward in the way that you say you might want to, but you think that's going to cause a catastrophe, you'll never move forward. You have to find out, why would I believe that something worse will happen if I move in the direction that I prefer? That's where you start investigating, where did I get this belief from? Did it come from my parents? Did it come from my friends, my society, my schooling? Where did I pick this up from? Because it has nothing to do with me. It has to do with other people's issues that I picked up along the way because I needed to survive. So I needed to blend in, I needed to fit in, I needed to buy in to their scenarios, their belief systems in order for them to take care of me. But now I'm an adult and I have the ability to take care of myself, which means I now have to go through a process of letting go of all of the beliefs from other people that I picked up along the way of becoming an adult, and I have to find out what all of those are and let them go because they have nothing to do with who I actually am. And that's part of the process that we're going through as humans, is to divest ourselves of what we have picked up on the way. And those are the challenges that we've laid out for ourselves, is to say, okay, I have picked up this belief system. The challenge is, how do I transmute this? How do I go beyond it? How do I understand how to change this? And that's the information that Bashar is delivering to us. This is how you change them. This is how you go beyond them. Here's the instruction manual.
What is the function of humanity?
To be unique. Again, Earth is a unique school. It's a very unique place in that it's got a lot of stories going on. It's got multiple challenges going on simultaneously. It's got a great depth of negativity, a great depth of polarity. So it's like a master graduating class. When a soul decides it's going to experience an earth incarnation, the soul is saying, this is going to accelerate me a lot, because it's like going into a graduate school. It's like going into a university. I'm not going to a kindergarten class anymore. I'm going to step it up. I'm going to have a physical experience that is so challenging that I know that if I can, in fact, transform it, that's going to really accelerate my growth as a soul much faster than taking an easier course. So just use the analogy of, instead of going to a high school, I'm going to a university. That's what Earth is all about.
From Bashar's perspective, who or what or where is God?
God is all that is from his perspective. It's literally everything. It's you, it's me, it's the desk, it's the chair. In other words, there's nothing that's not made out of it, because it's the only thing there is to make anything from. We are all aspects and reflections of it. It is the one thing that everything is. It is existence itself, self aware existence. And therefore, everything is made of it. So we are all aspects and reflections of it. It's all that is.
From Bashar's perspective, what is the function of religion?
Religion is a permission slip that some people use to help them align themselves with spirituality. It's not absolutely necessary. You can have a more direct connection to the idea of existence and creation and all that is, God, goddess, whatever you want to call it. Religion is simply a way that some societies needed to understand their relationship to existence, their relationship to all that is. But it's not now, in this modern day and age, absolutely a necessary way of relating. But some people get a benefit from it. It simply falls into the category of what Bashar calls permission slips. Any ritual, any discipline, any technique, any object that you believe helps you move forward, aligns you with who you prefer to be in an easier way, is like you using something to give yourself permission to be that person, to be who you want to be. So if you want to use religion to do that, fine. If you want to use some other methodology to do that, okay. But the idea simply is that sometimes religions, because of the nature of how they're structured, can be more like a disempowering thing in a way, because it's like saying, well, you need the go between, you need the mediator, you need the priest, you need the rabbi, you need this person to be an intermediary interface between you and God, you and all that is. But you have that connection yourself anyway. So it's up to you to decide whether religion works for you as a system of allowing you to feel connected to all that is, or whether you can just understand that you are connected and do it in a more direct spiritual way. It doesn't really matter what you use, as long as you use it in a beneficial way and being of service to others.
I don't know if you've ever asked Bashar this, but the meaning of religion comes from religio, which I believe means to connect or unite, connection, I believe.
Well, that's
Uh,
the original idea.
yeah.
Yeah.
Is, from Bashar's perspective, if this has ever been asked, is there any religion that is the closest to creating connection, to like a authentic relationship, and is there also one reciprocally that's actually takes people the furthest away, or a philosophy or anything of the sort?
Well, again, I'm just going to generalize this. The ones that are More insistent that you need the religion are the ones that take you farther away. The ones that are less insistent that you need the religion are the ones that are probably closest.
Give me examples of that. Would you say Christianity is a boo boo?
It depends on how you relate to it. Again, anything can be used in a positive or negative way. So, the idea of having any religion where you need to force that belief on someone else for some reason, I would say that's not a positive sign, and that it's probably taking you farther away from the truth. Any belief system or religion where it's more, let's just say, Zen, it's more Zen like, where it's just a matter of your connection and it doesn't, you're not trying to convince someone else that this is the way you should be, is probably closer to just being a straight spiritual connection. So again, that's a generalization, but it's how people use these things, because obviously someone who professes to be a Christian can be a very loving, helpful person, very kind and supportive, and they're not trying to convince you that you have to believe the same things that they do. If it works for them and makes them become more of who they want to be as a loving, kind, beneficial person, great if they're using it that way. But I think the people that think, well, if you don't become this, then something's wrong with you, or you're going to go to hell, or you're going to suffer, because you're doing it wrong and all that, I'd say that's exactly the incorrect direction to have a more spiritual relationship with existence.
It feels like the root of at least Christianity, or my assumption, probably most religions, probably are quite a bit more Zen like. And then it seems like perhaps they've been co opted by people along the way that use it as ways to create nationalism and tribalism and
It's been
divisiveness.
politicized for controlling purposes and all sorts of stuff, of course.
Yeah.
The root of every religion probably has a kernel of truth in it.
Yeah.
And in a lot of ways, I don't believe myself personally that Christianity is what Jesus was actually trying to say. So, what it's become, I don't think is what it actually was originally. And when you read things like the Gospel of Mary Magdalene, you get, I think, a closer representation of what Jesus was originally saying, which, if you actually look at it, is actually very metaphysical. So the idea of it, becoming this hierarchy of controlling, levels and political influence and all this kind of stuff is absolutely not what it was, I think, originally intended to be. It was basically Jesus saying, look, all the things I'm doing, you can do too. This is all within you. That's really what it's all about. But the idea that if you don't follow me, if you don't believe in me, you're going to go to hell, I don't think has anything at all to do with what he originally said. I think it has everything to do with what you're talking about in terms of this group of people needs to control that group of people. So we're going to tell you that if you don't listen to what we're saying, something bad's going to happen to you. I don't believe that that's absolutely true. I think it's just a manipulation.
Yeah. If a religion perpetuates division, it's probably been molested in some way or like shifted.
It's been co-opted. Yeah.
Yeah.
If it promotes you being a better person, a kinder person, being of service to others, being a loving being, then fine, you're keying into the aspects of it that can maybe help you in that direction. But that's all there is. And when you realize that that's all there is to it, then you can kind of be a kind, loving being of service without the religion.
Yeah. I don't know if I use molested in the right way. In Spanish, they like molestar. I live in Miami. Like molest is like
Yeah,
annoy,
well,
bother, whatever.
okay,
it's been like
co-opted.
disturbed.
Not its original form.
So that's original form. What does Bashar think
Yeah,
about the story that we have of human evolution? Is that right? Where did humans originate from?
that's a big story. Okay, first of all, we can go way back to just after the earth itself was formed, and you understand that there's this thing called panspermia. You know what panspermia is?
Yeah, we're all fungus from space.
generally speaking, a lot of genetic material came from other places and landed on planets where the environment was conducive to that genetic material evolving. So, in a sense, to begin with, we're all extraterrestrials from other extraterrestrial sources. But let's just set that aside and say, okay, whatever the source is of the naturally evolving life on Earth, at a certain point, it evolved into what we would call early hominid forms, like Homo erectus, things like that, a few million years ago. At a certain point, apparently, those beings were genetically altered by an extraterrestrial race to become Homo sapiens sapiens. So,
Who was the
in
race?
that sense,
Does they have a name?
well, what's what referred to as the Anunnaki in ancient texts,
Right.
the Watchers, whatever you want to call them, some other beings from out there, according to a lot of religious texts and scrolls and things like that, whatever you want to call them, arrived on Earth and for whatever reasons decided to alter our genetic makeup to suit themselves, to
And
make us more like them.
and they were giants. Is that right? Is that who the Anunnaki were?
I
Really big.
understand that they probably had a larger stature than we do and lived longer than we do, which is probably why humans thought they were gods.
Hmm.
They're just advanced extraterrestrials.
Hmm.
But the idea being then that from that point forward, we had even more of a mix of extraterrestrial genetics within us, so that whatever the original Homo sapiens form was, as humans spread out over the earth into different environmental ecological niches, the different genetic traits of different extraterrestrial beings that were already mixed into the extraterrestrials that added their genes to us started revealing itself, so that a different environment would create someone to become a different race with different features and different attributes. The fact that we have different races all over the planet is an indication that we have mixed extraterrestrial genetics, and different environments bring some of those differences out in us to create the different races of humans on the earth. But now we can actually add in something else, and that is what people have referred to as the alien abduction phenomenon, where now you have even more genetic manipulation going on, apparently for the purpose of creating a hybrid species, a more advanced version of humanity, maybe not only for the race that's doing it, that's hybridizing, that's creating the hybrids for themselves, but also for humanity as well, as part of our evolutionary path to upgrade us, to move us forward. So there have been several instances in our history of genetic alteration, genetic introduction that is making us something different and evolving us in a different way than we otherwise might have evolved had we been left alone.
Has Bashar mentioned when the earliest contact or recontact with what we call aliens with humans was, like in linear years?
Yeah, he's saying it happened. This initial introduction of genetic material by that Anunnaki extraterrestrial race was probably somewhere around 500,000 years ago, 300,000, 500,000 years ago. That's when we find in the historical records, or in the geological records or anthropological records, when suddenly there was this change in humanity. That's what caused people to say, well, where's the missing link? How did we get from here to there? And so basically what we're discovering is that the missing link is the extraterrestrial genetics that created Homo sapiens from Homo erectus. So about 500,000, give or take, years ago, this is something that happened back then.
Are there a lot of different sects or species of extraterrestrial life? Is it in the tens and the thousands and the infinite? How many realms of other extraterrestrial life are there?
If you want to, yeah, if you want to just include the idea of what's out in the galaxy or the universe, then yes, you're going to run into millions and millions. If you're talking about simply the ones that are engaged with Earth at this time, then you're probably talking about a dozen or so.
Are they among us now? And if so, who are they? Who is Elon Musk?
No, Elon Musk is a human.
He's a dude?
I'm not going into those conspiracy theories that they're disguised reptilians and stuff like that.
Well,
That's all
well,
nonsense and mythology.
the reason I asked that isn't to go into a conspiracy. I mean, unless whatever. But the is because Elon has this obsession with going to space, and so I'm
Yes.
calling back panspermia, which a part of the idea is
Okay,
we
I
we
get
have
what
a
you're going.
desire to
Yes,
go to
I get what you're
space.
going.
Yeah.
I get where you're going. And a lot of people are evolving to the point where they are extending their consciousness because we understand that we are about to have open contact. So we have arranged our lives in a way that promote the idea that we need to go into space because space is also coming to us. Beings that live in space are coming to us. So a lot of humans are accelerated that way to make those connections because we all have extraterrestrial connections. Some people may be more in touch with that than others. Elon may be one of those. But the idea, generally speaking, is that there are hybrid beings among us that are helping us. They look human enough that they can blend in. And within a couple of years, is my understanding, not only from Bashar, but from other psychics who've predicted this independently of each other, in about 2 years, we're going to actually have official open contact where ETs will be introduced to us and it will be explained that they've been here helping us for quite some time.
Have you met aliens on Earth?
Not that I'm aware of. I may have, we all may have run into them or seen them, but we won't know who they are until open contact happens. Then it will be revealed to us who they are.
Does extraterrestrial life have a benevolent um, relationship to humanity?
The ones that are engaging with us, yes. Now, there are some that, let's just say, they're not malevolent, but they don't necessarily have a particular agenda to interact with humanity in any way that they're really concerned about. They're not trying to help us, but they're not trying to hurt us. So they're just kind of like doing their thing. They're observing, they're learning, they're taking whatever samples they need from the earth to study us. But most of the ones that are interacting with us are benevolent, and they're keeping a lid on anything that might actually not be. So they're watching out for us in that sense.
Why does extraterrestrial life care about humanity?
Well, it's what I said earlier. This is a unique school for souls to learn from. You have to understand that really advanced extraterrestrials operate on a vibrational frequency that's not that different from spirit. So they understand the importance of having a place and an experience that allow souls to expand, to grow, to evolve. It helps the entire universe, it helps them. So they're willing to treat us in that sense and even genetically understand that we're family and we're growing. It's the same way that you would say, well, I'm helping this child learn things and grow up. So by having chosen to experience an earth incarnation, they're saying, okay, we have your back. You're going to go through something that's going to teach you things, but it's also teaching other people things, other beings out in the cosmos. It's almost like saying, hey, you've come to a place that's a really tough school, a really challenging school. But if you can graduate, if you can master this, then not only are you learning something, but other civilizations who may not be facing the same degree of challenges that you are can look at you and go, well, if they can do it, we can do it. A lot of other beings can learn a lot from what we're experiencing here on Earth.
How much of modern humans' technology originates from extraterrestrials? Transmissions of some sort.
Yeah, I think some of it does. If not, well, let me say there's a couple of categories of this. Number one, some of it may actually be reverse engineered from craft that we have gotten our hands on that have crashed. Some of it may be literally being assisted by extraterrestrials saying, okay, here's the information, go ahead and develop this. And some of it may be that humans that have a capacity to tap into higher knowledge may be downloading information that they need to advance those technologies as well. So I would say on those three levels, we're probably getting a lot of help.
How long has the government been hiding its awareness of extraterrestrial life?
Well, I think definitely since just after World War II, because the granddaddy of all ET interaction kinds of things is what is known as the Roswell crash, in 1947. So I think definitely since then, if not a little bit before, because we already knew there were UFOs around before that, but we didn't probably have a lot of knowledge of it. But I think after 1947, when we retrieved a crashed ship that crashed outside Roswell, New Mexico, then we started going, okay, there's something to this, and we need to sort of keep this under wraps, either because we're afraid that people are going to panic if they know that this is happening and extraterrestrials exist, or we just want to keep other countries from knowing about this technology because we want this technology first. So, but at this point, a lot of countries and a lot of governments know this is going on. That's why you're starting to see all sorts of congressional hearings about this stuff and whistleblowers bringing it out. And it's time for people to understand that this has been going on for a while. So that by the time we actually have open contact in a couple of years, it kind of won't be that much of a surprise because it's been leaked out into our culture in any number of ways over the last half century.
What is extraterrestrial life doing when it presents itself and then makes itself and then obfuscates itself? Like, what is the point of doing it? It's kind of like we like hey, why show itself?
Getting you used to it slowly over time so you won't freak out. So the more we see UFOs, we go, okay, there they are. The more we hear more reports of people seeing aliens, it's like, okay, that seems to be growing and it seems to be a normal thing. And we're still here. Our lives still go on. They're not interfering or stopping us from having a life. So over time, we get used to it. It's how you get used to anything. You experience it little by little in baby steps over time until at a point it's kind of like the biggest secret that everyone already knows. So that by the time someone says, okay, it's time to introduce you to the ETs openly, you go, okay, yeah, we already knew this was happening. So no big deal.
So, from Bashar's perspective, ETs are so considerate of humanity's experience that they are offering a form of exposure therapy to introduce themselves to Earth.
Yes, because this isn't the first rodeo for the aliens. They have done this with other civilizations as well, if they're very advanced beings. They've made contact. Bashar himself is literally a first contact specialist. So he's done this with other civilizations. So they know how to do this. And for certain civilizations, they understand that time is essential for certain people and certain beings to get used to the idea that they're not alone in the universe. And therefore, they're more than happy to go, okay, this is going to take half a century or so. That's what it takes. I mean, to an ET that might live 300, 400, 500 years, waiting 50 years to make contact with a civilization may be no big deal to them.
What does that mean that Bashar is a first contact specialist?
It means he makes initial overtures to different civilizations, either through channeling or in other ways, to get them used to the idea that they're communicating with something other than themselves, to see whether or not they're going to accept the information, whether they're going to apply his information in their lives. And he uses that as a measuring device, as a barometer for how willing we are to accept the idea of ET contact, how willing we are to evolve ourselves in the direction of having that contact, or whether would they need to leave us alone, whether we don't accept it. So a first contact specialist has been trained to find ways to open up a dialogue with a civilization and see if further contact is warranted or whether that civilization needs to be left to its own devices.
I think I already asked in a certain way, and you'll probably get frustrated because I might be
No, I won't get
repeating
frustrated.
myself. I notice you
I don't
get.
care.
I notice you'll be short with people interviewing you sometimes. You
No,
say
well,
like,
it's just,
I already fucking
I'm
said
just,
that, asshole.
No, I'm not going to say it like that. But the idea is I understand that, people come from a certain place.
Uh-huh.
And sometimes like Bashar will get a little bit more direct or blunt about it because he understands, look, you're very close to understanding this, so I'm just going to try and push you over that threshold. But if you don't go there, then I'm going to back off because it doesn't matter to me. But, yeah, sure, it's up to you, to decide whether to absorb the information or not. So that's your call.
All right, so I'm gonna risk. I think probably potentially ask the same question again, but is there if why is it the extraterrestrial wants to come in contact with us because of like the level of consciousness of the human experience? Like, or are we're like especially special in this whole grand galaxy scheme of things?
In certain ways, yes. Like I said, this is a master graduating class. It's a
Well,
university. It's for souls that want to really advance. So whether we do or not is not the point. The point is that we initially chose to be in a reality, having a reality experience that allows us the opportunity to really, really advance quickly. That is something that's important to a lot of highly evolved extraterrestrials, is what the soul can do to advance itself, because they're looking at this from the whole big picture. They're not looking at it from these little details that humans focus on. Their understanding is, how is what you're experiencing actually benefiting the entirety of existence? They're looking at it from that larger scale picture. And they're not just going, well, how does it benefit Joe Blow who lives in New York? It's like, that's fine if it does, but what you're going through has benefits for everybody out here too. So they're looking at it from the big picture.
where does our consciousness rank in terms of other highly advanced extraterrestrial species?
On what, well, the way you ask the question is answerable in a number of different ways. If you're just talking about our literal consciousness, it's the same as everything, same as everyone's consciousness, where all souls are the same. But in terms of humanity's physical awareness and advancement, and how it uses the consciousness of our souls, or how it limits the consciousness of our souls, then obviously we're not as advanced as some other extraterrestrial species who have learned to be more of who they are, have learned to allow more of their soul to express itself in physical terms. So, just to put a sort of a time frame on it, Bashar has sort of hinted that in about 1,000 years will be where his civilization is at this point. So if you want to use that as a marker, you can. It doesn't mean that our soul is any less advanced, but it can be a representation that we're a young society physically.
Does the soul exist within the body? Are there individuated souls, or is there only one soul?
No, no, no. Well, it depends on what level you're talking about. A soul is usually referred to as an individual aspect of all that is, of God, goddess, whatever. So you're an individual soul. But it's more accurate to say, rather than saying the body has a soul, it's more accurate to say the soul has a body, because the physical reality is created within the soul. The soul never leaves its non physical reality. That's its natural state. It is a spirit, it is an energy. It's creating the physical experience within itself. So it's creating the concept of a body and a physical mind and a physical experience within the soul itself. If you want to look at it as, let's say, the soul in its natural form is a ball of energy, it's a sphere, it doesn't take any particular shape. That's its relaxed form, an orb of light, an orb of energy, and it contains different patterns of energy within itself. So if it wants to have a physical experience, it would take some of those different energy patterns that represent different concepts, different perspectives, and it would focus them down into the center of that energy sphere. It doesn't dissipate the energy sphere, that still exists, but it concentrates certain vibrational patterns down into the center and creates a kind of concentrated nugget or crystal or seed at the center. And that concentrated seed of those specific energy patterns represents the experience of the physical reality. It represents the physical body, the physical mind, the physical experience that the soul is having within itself. And then as it relaxes that over time, as it learns different things, it expands that, it softens that back out. Now you start having more soul like attributes: telepathy, psychic functioning, astral travel, near death experiences, back to the soul diameter, back to the full energy sphere. So the idea of incarnation is aspects within the soul, certain vibrational patterns within the soul that represent certain concepts and challenges, condense into the center to crystallize and form a life path experience called physical reality. Then it's done with that, it expands back out. Another life concentrates again, different patterns, different life, reincarnation, as we call it, expands back out again. So the idea of incarnation after incarnation is like the soul expanding and contracting within itself, almost like the soul is breathing in and out, in and out, to have different experiences of different realities, whether on Earth, other planets, other dimensions, whatever. But the soul is doing all of that within itself.
And when a person has particular, past life memories or past life regressions or things of the sort, is there such a thing as an individuated past life held within this self?
Yes, because once the soul has that experience, all those experiences are within the soul. So it can always access that. And in any given life, you have access of all of that through the soul, because the soul has all those experiences within itself. So you're always connected to those things. And in a sense, in a timeless state, all those lives coexist at the same time. The soul can experience, or the oversoul, the higher soul, can experience all of those lives simultaneously. That's what we refer to, but for as an oversoul, just for convenience of language. It's the idea of a higher level of soul that can actually experience all of its incarnations, all of its experiences, all at once, all at the same time, instead of linearly one after another. That's the experience of linear time in physical reality. So physical reality is based on linear time experiences and perspectives. The soul is flexible time, where it can experience the idea of linear time, but can also experience simultaneous time. And then the idea of the oversoul is it only experiences everything all at once, simultaneously, like a mini version of what you would imagine God would be like, experiencing anything and everything.
So would it be accurate to say that every individual has experienced, if you're trying to try to conflate like the linear perspective into a broader reality, every individual has experienced every past life and every future life, and we tune in to maybe possible channels or like frequencies and have memories of, it feels like a linear past life, but in fact I
Yes.
have experienced all lives.
Yes, you're tapping into what exists simultaneously with you. And because you're tapping into it from a linear perspective, we translate that as a memory. See, this is why, the old chestnut of, 50 different people saying, "Oh, I was Cleopatra," is possible because they're just tapping into another being that exists in its own right, that still is accessible to anyone and everyone because it exists forever on a certain level. So 50 different people can tap into the idea of the experience of being Cleopatra. It's just that from our linear perspective, we often translate that as, oh, well, that's a memory, which means I was Cleopatra. No, it just means that you, like 50 other people, can simultaneously tap into the being known as Cleopatra because she always exists on some level.
From Bashar's perspective, have you ever asked him anything about Hitler? Who was Hitler? Why was he so angry? Is there such a thing as evil?
Bashar sort of touched on that a little bit, and he's explained it's not so much the idea of what we typically label as evil as it is the idea of someone who lives in fear. And when someone lives in fear, when they feel that disconnection, that emptiness, they try to lash out. They try to make a connection, but they don't know how to make a connection in a positive way. They only know how to make a connection in a fear based way, which means they try to control others. They try to control their environment. They try to limit things in a way that they can feel that they're in charge, that they're in control, because they feel so out of control to begin with, that the only way they can imagine being in control is to control their external experience rather than going within and allowing themselves to find the connection and the control that exists inside for everyone. So it's not so much the idea that someone is evil in the way we classically mean it, but these individuals are kind of like lost. They are out of control. They are in deep fear. They feel disconnected. They feel totally lost, and they're trying to control their environment as a substitute for finding that connection within themselves. And some people can do that a little bit, and some people can do that if they're in great amounts of fear. They feel really out of control. They can do it a lot. So it's about teaching these people and teaching humanity how to experience the connection that they always have to source, and connect to that and use that in a way that would make it unnecessary for them to feel like they have to try and control others in their outer environment in order to feel their self empowerment. That's what they're trying to do. They're trying to feel powerful because they don't feel they are. They don't believe they are. And so they try to control their environment in order to get this illusion of power. But it's just an illusion.
Is there any such thing as a mistake? Was Hitler perfect? Were concentration camps a perfect part of this design? Is everything right, or is there anything that's like, ooh,
In the sense, it's not a mistake, but in the sense that something is created that's an opportunity for humanity to learn lessons from it. So I'm just going to put this on a really super simplistic level. These beings chose to have the possibility of an experience where they would act out in a way that allows humanity to learn how not to have that happen ever again. So, because of what humanity was at that point, it needed someone to be the bad guy in order for humanity to learn how to say, okay, what do we have to do within ourselves? What do we have to change about our understanding of ourselves so that this never happens again, so that no people like this ever have to play that role again? We obviously don't learn that lesson very quickly because things like that keep cropping up. But that's the thing I talked about before, where, okay, the soul is infinite, it's eternal, and it's like some soul will choose to play that role over and over and over and over and over and over again until humanity finally gets the point of, hey, we need to figure out how to address this in a way that actually addresses the cause of these things and not just the symptoms of these things, so that we actually know this will never happen in humanity again, and no soul ever has to play that role ever again.
if there was, we can wrap up here in a minute. Is there any, if there was a single truth that you've learned from Bashar that could potentially uh, maybe liberate humanity to a higher degree, uh, what would that truth be if everyone believed it?
We have to understand that we are always in touch with our soul, and our soul is guiding us through life. And it guides us through the sensation that we call passion, excitement, creativity, and love. So the opportunities that arrive in our lives that contain the highest amount of excitement and passion and creativity and love for us are messages from our soul saying, this is who you are. Act on it, because this is who you are. And if we allow ourselves to be guided that way, everything will fall into place. Synchronicity will abound. Our lives will become a magical explosion of ecstatic experiences. But if we doubt it, if we deny it, if we don't pay attention to that, then we struggle and we have difficulty, and therefore we're not being our true selves. You've got to pay attention to those messages. You've got to pay attention to who you really are. You've got to allow yourself to be your true natural self. That's what this is all about. That's what this class is all about. That's what this university is all about. It is the ancient phrase over and over again, know thyself and be in service to others, because when you're in service to the whole will serve you too. When you're in service only to self, you cut yourself off from the service that the whole can provide for you. So be yourself, don't panic, don't worry, move forward in life in a positive way. It's not a Pollyanna thing to do. It is the way things actually work if you allow them to. You don't have to make life work, you just have to allow it to work. Be yourself and it will.
What are synchronicities and signs and things? Something that I notice, and you've mentioned, when I am doing something, I'm traveling someplace, I'm doing an event, I'm doing something that really makes me feel excited, alive. It opens up this kind of what feels like a more authentic version of myself. I also notice a tremendous number of synchronicities. I notice certain numbers, I'll be, there's that freaking number. It's right on the, like, this is,
Exactly.
can't make this shit up. Who or what is conveying those synchronicities? Is that me manifesting them? Like, what is that?
It can be many things. It can be you manifesting it. It can be communication from your soul that you're on the right track at that moment. It can be from your spirit guide saying, this is the right state of being that you're in right now. Pay attention to the signs. Come from this feeling in everything you do. But when we raise our vibration by acting on our passion, we become a better receiver, a better antenna for what's actually happening in physical reality. And when you're on that high vibration, you start experiencing more synchronicity because you start understanding that everything is synchronicity, that nothing is an accident, that it's all an orchestration, and you start perceiving the orchestration, no matter what the situation is. You start understanding that everything is intertwined, interconnected, and every single thing that happens is happening for a reason. It's all an orchestration. So you get to see that and perceive that when you're operating on a higher frequency. So that's what happens. And that's what you're shown when you start seeing those synchronous numbers and start having more synchronicities in your life. This is what you start perceiving when you're operating on a higher frequency. So anytime you experience that little synchronistic number, feel what you feel like at that moment. And that's the vibration to stay in. And that's the vibration to come from in everything you do in life. You're right now aligned with yourself perfectly. That's what that's telling you.
So Joseph Campbell was onto something with follow your bliss. That was a
Yes,
probably similar
absolutely.
Bashar type perspective.
But you have to do it with the entire set of instructions that Bashar delivers. A lot of people just stop short. Yeah, sure, I'm going to act on my passion. And they forget all the rest of the instruction manual. So it's taking it as far as you can until you can take it no further, letting the excitement wane naturally, not killing the excitement with your fear based beliefs. It's also acting on your passion without any assumption or insistence on what you think the outcome should be like, because the truth is, you don't really always know what the ideal outcome is supposed to look like. But you have to know the ideal outcome will happen if you just follow your passion. Stay in a positive state no matter what happens, because then you get a benefit out of what's happening. If you identify it as something negative, then you're only going to experience it negatively. And then look at your belief systems, let go of the fear based ones, let go of the negative ones, and free yourself to be able to allow the soul to deliver what it needs to deliver to you. And then trust that that's exactly how your life needs to unfold. Because it shouldn't matter really in your life what happens, it only matters what you do with it that makes the difference in your life. That's the entire instruction manual. People often stop short and forget about the rest of it, and they just get caught up in, I'm going to follow my bliss. And then they do things that are actually not representative of their excitement, but more representative of their anxiety, because they're disguising their anxiety as excitement so they don't have to pay attention to the fact that they're actually out of alignment with themselves because they don't want to look at that. So you have to really be honest with yourself in your self investigation. Just follow the instructions, everything falls into place.
Awesome, man. Thank you so much. I really appreciate
Well,
taking the
thank
time.
you for doing this. I deeply appreciate it and the opportunity to share all this.
Yeah.
And thank you for anyone that's listening.
Yeah. How can
So
people go deeper into, I mean, just look up your name or Bashar, but what's the best place to
they
point people from
can,
here?
yeah, they can go to bashar.org, bashar.org, where they can find out anything that Bashar has talked about or any events that are coming up to deliver new information. If they want to know what I'm doing about, my escape room and stuff like that, what I'm following as my passions, they can go to boggledescaperooms.com. Come along and play a game with us, BOGGLED, boggledescaperooms.com. Or if they want to know what I'm doing, they can go to darrylanka.com in terms of books and things that I'm writing and creating as well.
Amazing. Thank you so much. I appreciate you. I really
Thank
genuinely
you,
enjoyed that
Aaron.
conversation.
I
Um,
appreciate it very much. I enjoyed it as well.
when I,
I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you all for tuning in. That is it.
Bye.
That is all. We'll see you next week. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed that episode, you might also enjoy this episode over here, as well as this one over here. Thank you for subscribing. Appreciate you. I'll see you in the next video.